My name is Clara Vance. I'm 32 years old now, and just yesterday the new Forbes 30 Under 30 issue was released, featuring my photo right beside a $110 million valuation for Shoreline OS, the application that manages boutique coastal hotels with an efficiency no human team could ever match. For 9 solid months, my phone had been a dead, silent brick. It didn't ring for my birthday. It didn't light up for Christmas. Not a single text. Nothing. Then, this morning, at exactly 10:12 a.m., the screen flared to life with a contact name I hadn't laid eyes on since last winter. Father. The message itself was brutally concise. Just 2 short lines. Family dinner tonight, 7:30 sharp. We have big news. I just stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 seconds. A full 9 months of being treated like a ghost, and now, a mere 12 hours after that Forbes article hit the internet, I'm suddenly being summoned for a family dinner. I felt a cold smile touch my lips as I typed back a single, deliberate sentence. Sorry, I'm busy. The Forbes party starts at 7. I hit send. I watched the little blue read receipt pop up almost instantly. Then, the 3 little dots began to dance. They bounced and pulsed for a long, long time, a frantic, silent argument happening on the other end. I didn't bother to wait for the reply. I locked the phone, tossed it onto the plush cushions of my sofa, and turned away. They genuinely believed they were texting the same quiet, broke, approval-seeking daughter who used to practically beg for a scrap of their attention. They had absolutely no clue that the girl they had so casually and completely ignored had just become the one person on earth with the power to absolutely bury them. But before I walk you through exactly how that dinner actually went down, do me a favor and smash that like button, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from, and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on what happens next. You're going to want to see what it looks like when the tables are finally irrevocably flipped. Trust me, you are not ready for this. 2 years ago, on a blindingly bright May afternoon in Pasadena, California, I stood backstage at Caltech's Beckman Auditorium, fighting the frantic urge to throw up. The heavy black graduation gown felt comically large on my frame. It hung off my shoulders like a borrowed costume. I'd shed nearly 15 pounds during that final semester, a period of my life fueled almost exclusively by black coffee and whatever fractured sleep I could steal in 3-hour increments. The ceremonial crimson hood felt like a lead weight, as if the fabric itself already knew I had no business being up on that stage by myself. Out in the courtyard, 3,500 white chairs were arranged in perfect rows, all facing the stage under a pristine, cloudless sky. The distant San Gabriel Mountains shimmered in the heat haze behind the podium. Every single one of those chairs was filled with families, a sea of beaming faces, waving homemade signs, clutching balloons, their cameras poised and ready. I clutched my own name card so tightly that the sharp edges of the cardstock dug painful little crescents into my palm. I had sent 6 tickets to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Front row, center section. I had paid extra for priority express mail, tracked the package online, and even saw the delivered notification with my own 2 eyes. I started whispering excuses to myself, a desperate litany to keep the panic at bay. I told myself the traffic on the R15 must be an absolute nightmare this time of day. I told myself they were just having trouble finding parking. I told myself anything, any plausible lie that would keep my legs from giving out beneath me. The Dean of Engineering began calling the names. One by one, each graduate walked across the platform, and with each name, a different section of the crowd would erupt in a cacophony of cheers, whistles, and joyful shouts. I kept my eyes locked on those 6 empty seats, trying to will them to fill, to manifest my family out of thin air. They never did. Clara Elizabeth Vance, Master of Science in Computer Science and Electrical Engineering. My name boomed from the speakers, echoing across the sun-drenched courtyard. The walk to the center of the stage felt like it stretched for miles. The polished wooden platform flexed and creaked under my borrowed high heels. The university president offered a practiced, impersonal smile, handed me the heavy leather folder containing my diploma, and shook my hand once, a firm, brisk motion. Cameras flashed from every conceivable angle, a storm of bright lights, yet none of them were for me. I dared to glance down at the family section one last time. Still just 6 empty, mocking chairs. I forced the smile they expected for the official university photographer, turned the tassel on my cap from right to left, and stepped off the far side of the stage. The very second my shoe touched the soft grass, my phone vibrated against my hip. Father, you actually went through with it without us there. Fine, don't expect another dime from me. You made your choice. I stopped walking, dead in my tracks. Graduates were streaming all around me, a river of laughter, hugs, and happy tears. To my left, a father lifted his cap-and-gown-clad daughter high off the ground in a triumphant bear hug. To my right, a mother was sobbing into a bouquet of red roses, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated pride. I stood frozen in the middle of all that joy, a solitary island of ice, reading those callous words over and over and over until the screen timed out and went black. The air smelled of freshly mown grass and a dozen different expensive perfumes. I could hear the festive pop of champagne corks from somewhere behind me. I felt the precise physical moment that something deep inside me cracked open and then went utterly, terrifyingly quiet. I didn't cry. Not then. The tears would come later. I just walked, a solitary figure in black, moving across the lawn, past all the celebrating families, past all the proud fathers who would never be mine. My phone buzzed again. Mother, this time. Tell us where you are, we're stuck in traffic. I didn't even consider answering. I just kept walking until I reached the busy intersection at California Boulevard, sat down on the hard curb outside the student union, and finally let the tears fall. They were silent. They always had been. A janitor sweeping the nearby sidewalk glanced over at me, his expression momentarily curious, before he quickly looked away. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked if I was okay. I wiped my face with the rough sleeve of the graduation gown, stood up, and took the shuttle to LAX. I had a 9:15 p.m. red-eye flight back to South Carolina because I couldn't afford to miss another one of my food delivery shifts. I boarded the plane still wearing the cap and gown. The flight attendant gave me a sympathetic look and asked if I'd like her to hang them up for me. I told her no, then folded them carefully and stuffed them into the overhead bin as if they were just any other piece of carry-on luggage. Somewhere over the dark expanse of Arizona, I opened my laptop on the flimsy tray table and began to write the first lines of code for what would one day put my name on that Forbes list. Because 6 empty chairs teach you a lesson you can never unlearn. They teach you exactly who will never show up for you when it truly matters. And I decided, right there at 30,000 feet, that the next time the world looked at me, no one would ever have the option to look away again. That row of empty seats at my graduation wasn't a surprise, not really. It was a culmination. I learned at a very young age that in the Vance household, attention was a finite resource, a currency that was almost always spent on someone other than me. When I was 12, I had been diligently taking violin lessons for 3 years. My instructor, a stern but fair Russian woman, entered me into the Myrtle Beach Youth Orchestra's annual solo competition. I practiced every single day after school, repeating the same difficult passages until my fingertips were raw and sometimes even bled. The final concert was scheduled for a Saturday night at the local Performing Arts Center. I was going to wear the navy velvet dress my mother had bought me 2 years prior, which was now uncomfortably tight and noticeably too short in the sleeves and hem. My father picked me up from my final rehearsal the week of the show. "Great news," he announced, beaming. "Leo made varsity quarterback. The team has a big scrimmage that same night. We're all going to be there to support him." His tone made it clear this wasn't a discussion. I remember my voice sounding small when I asked if they could at least come for the second half of my concert, after the scrimmage was over. My mother actually laughed, a short, sharp sound, as if I just told a particularly silly joke. Clara, honey, family shows up for family. Leo needs us there more. I played the concert anyway. The auditorium was packed, 1,000 faceless strangers. I walked onto the brightly lit stage, my bow trembling in my hand, and I instinctively scanned the crowd for 5 familiar faces. Of course, I found none. I performed Vivaldi's Spring flawlessly, poured every ounce of my frustration and loneliness into the music, took my bow to a round of polite, anonymous applause, and then rode the city bus home alone, my violin case banging rhythmically against my knees. The next morning, the entire front of the refrigerator was a shrine to my brother. There were pictures of Leo in his football jersey, his helmet tucked under his arm, my father's hand clapped proudly on his shoulder. My sister Chloe was in another picture, holding up a handmade poster that read, "Go Leo One." My first place certificate from the competition went directly from my backpack into a desk drawer where it remains to this day. That was the first time I truly understood the unspoken rules of my family. If someone else required the spotlight, mine was simply switched off. High school only reinforced the same dynamic. My brother, Leo, managed to wreck 2 cars before he even turned 18. Both times, my father replaced them with newer, better models without so much as a lecture. My sister Chloe decided at 15 that her life's calling was to be a social media influencer. And for Christmas that year, she received a brand new iPhone, a professional ring light, and a collection of designer outfits. That same Christmas, I asked for a laptop that could run modern coding software without crashing every 10 minutes. My father told me to just use the computers at the public library. When college acceptance letters started arriving, I was accepted to William Mary with a partial academic scholarship. My father looked at the remaining tuition bill and sighed dramatically. "That's a lot of money for a hobby, Clara. Maybe you should consider community college for a couple of years first." 2 months later, Leo announced he was taking a gap year to travel before college, and suddenly $25,000 materialized for him to go backpacking through Europe with his friends. I graduated as valedictorian of my high school, applied for every scholarship I could possibly find, and ultimately chose Caltech because their financial aid package was generous enough to cover everything except books and living expenses. My father still sent me a monthly allowance, $500 wired on the first of every month, just enough for groceries and the occasional bus pass. It wasn't an act of generosity. It was an instrument of control. As long as that money kept coming, he held the power to threaten to cut it off, a leash to keep me in line. I got 3 jobs anyway. I worked early morning shifts pouring lattes at the campus coffee shop, spent my afternoons tutoring calculus to freshmen who partied more than they studied, and worked 3 nights a week delivering Thai food all over Pasadena and the surrounding towns in my beat-up old Camry. I usually smelled like a strange combination of espresso and red curry, but the tips I earned paid for my cloud server credits and the initial API subscriptions I needed. They fueled the first lines of code for my project, written in the dead of night around 3 in the morning when the dorm was finally quiet. Every winter break, I would fly home to Myrtle Beach, clinging to a sliver of hope that something, anything might have changed. It never had. The family business, a string of 7 tired, run-down beach motels built in the 1970s, was hemorrhaging money. Online reviews were brutal, with guests complaining about peeling paint, spotty Wi-Fi, and mattresses that sagged in the middle like sad, worn-out hammocks. My father stubbornly refused to update anything. "People come for the ocean, not the internet," he'd grumble, and then proceed to spend what should have been the renovation budget on a new fishing boat for himself. I watched the booking numbers plummet year after year, while Leo, who was supposed to be managing one of the properties, spent most of his afternoons on the golf course, and Chloe filmed TikTok dance videos on the beach wearing designer bikinis my father had bought her. I tried to talk to him about it once, During my sophomore year, I came prepared with spreadsheets, data, and a detailed presentation on dynamic pricing models and the importance of online travel agencies. He patted me on the head, a deeply condescending gesture, as if I were still 12 years old. "Sweetie," he said, a dismissive smile on his face, "leave the business stuff to the men." So, I stopped asking. I stopped trying. Instead, I just built my own thing, in secret. Every single dollar I earned from those 3 part-time jobs was poured into servers, APIs, and the development of the first version of an algorithm that could predict hotel occupancy rates, adjust room prices in real time, and interface with every major booking platform simultaneously. I named the prototype Shoreline OS because its logic moved with the invisible tides of market demand that no one else in my family even bothered to see. By the time I was defending my master's thesis, Shoreline OS was already being beta tested by 3 small independent hotels in California. Their revenue had jumped an average of 42% in the first quarter alone. I knew then that this wasn't just a school project anymore. This was my way out, and those 6 empty seats at my graduation were the final, definitive proof that I no longer needed their money, their approval, or their presence. When my father's text lit up my phone after 9 months of complete and total radio silence, I didn't feel the familiar sting of anger anymore. What I felt was a cold, detached curiosity. I was curious to see just how quickly they could rewrite 9 months of neglect into a sudden family emergency that urgently required my attendance. I set my phone down on the cool quartz of my kitchen island and let the screen go dark. My penthouse apartment was silent, save for the low, distant hum of the Atlantic Ocean 2 blocks away. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked down at the glittering lights of the boardwalk. People were heading out for the evening, laughing, their arms linked. Normal families. I turned away from the window and opened the hallway closet, the one I never use for guests. Inside hung the clothes from my previous life, a collection of ghosts. There was the gray fisherman's sweater with the frayed cuff that I'd practically lived in during finals week at Caltech, the faded Levi's that had once been my only pair of presentable jeans, the scuffed brown boots I'd found at a thrift store in Pasadena because they were only $20 and kept my feet warm. I pulled them all out one by one and laid them on the bed. Then I went down to the garage. My daily driver is a matte black Audi e-tron that still has that new car smell. I walked right past it, past the Tesla I barely ever drive, and stopped at the very back corner of the garage where my old 2014 Toyota Camry sits under a dusty gray car cover. I had bought it used the week I moved back to Myrtle Beach after graduation. The paint on the hood is oxidized and faded from too many brutal South Carolina summers. The driver's side mirror is held together with duct tape, and the check engine light has been permanently illuminated for the last 3 years because the cost of the repair is more than the car itself is worth. I keep it registered and insured for exactly this kind of occasion. I pulled the cover off, tossed it into the trunk, and slid behind the wheel. The seat still smelled faintly of the Thai food I used to deliver. The key turned in the ignition with a familiar, hesitant grind before the engine coughed to life. I backed out slowly, the old tires crunching on the smooth epoxy floor, and headed south on Ocean Boulevard. The sun was sinking behind the high-rise hotels, painting the sky in dramatic streaks of orange and pink over the water. I rolled down the windows and let the salty air whip through the car, tangling my hair. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed to feel every single second of this drive. I thought about the first impulsive reply I had sent back, the one that had caused my mother to spam my phone with a string of crying emojis for 20 straight minutes. I thought about how simple it would have been to just keep ignoring them, to let them fade away completely. But my curiosity had won out. It wasn't the kind of curiosity that holds out a desperate hope for reconciliation. It was a colder, more clinical kind, the kind that wants to watch people reveal exactly who they are when they think they've already won. I turned left onto Kings Highway, driving past the endless strip malls and tacky surf shops, past the flashing neon signs advertising 2-for-1 crab leg dinners. The Grand Palmetto Hotel soon appeared on my right, a beacon of restored 1920s glamour, its massive white columns glowing under a new set of warm floodlights. I pulled into the circular driveway and stopped behind a line of pristine Range Rovers and gleaming Mercedes sedans. The valet was a kid, 19, maybe 20, wearing a crisp navy blue uniform. He took one look at my beat-up Camry, then at me, and he hesitated. A flicker of indecision in his eyes, as if he wasn't sure whether to park it out front or hide it around the back with the service vehicles. I handed him the keys without a word. He glanced at my frayed sweater, my unwashed hair pulled back in a messy bun, the worn-out hem of my jeans, and a condescending smirk instantly formed on his lips. "Running a little late, ma'am?" he asked, already reaching for the claim ticket, his tone dripping with disdain. "Traffic," I said flatly, and walked away before he could decide if I was joking. Inside, the lobby smelled of lemon polish and old money. The polished marble floor reflected the glittering crystal chandeliers like still water. I caught my own reflection in a massive gold-framed mirror. Tired eyes, messy hair, clothes that screamed impoverished grad student. Perfect. The hostess at the podium recognized the Vance reservation and gave me a smile that was a little too bright, a little too forced. "Right this way, Ms. Vance. Your party is already seated." I followed her through the main dining room, past tables of well-dressed couples in suits and sequin dresses, past waiters balancing silver trays laden with oysters and massive steaks. The private dining room was at the very back of the restaurant, its heavy double wooden doors shut tight. I could hear laughter coming from within, loud and forced, the kind of laughter people use when they're trying to convince themselves that everything is perfectly fine. I paused just outside, resting my hand on the cool brass handle, and I felt absolutely nothing. No nerves, no residual sadness, just the cold, clean certainty that whatever happened over the next hour would be the last time I would ever have to care what any of them thought. Then I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. I stepped into the private dining room at the Grand Palmetto at exactly 7:30. My mother saw me first. She let out a high-pitched squeal that made a nearby waiter flinch and launched herself across the plush carpet, her arms thrown wide as if we were in some cheesy airport reunion commercial. Her perfume, a heavy cloud of gardenia and something obnoxiously expensive, hit me a second before she did. She squeezed me so hard I felt my ribs creak. "There's my baby girl," and she cooed into my hair, her voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. "We've missed you so much." My father stood next to her, smoothing the lapels of his navy blazer, the one he always wears when he wants to project an image of patriarchal authority. He clapped both of his hands on my shoulders, gave them a firm, proprietary shake, and grinned wide enough to show off the porcelain veneers he'd gotten last year. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence." From his seat at the table, Leo lifted his glass of bourbon in a lazy toast. "Hey sis, nice threads. Going for that homeless chic vibe, are we?" Chloe naturally was already angling her phone, the ring light clipped to the case glowing ominously, filming the entire scene. "Smile, Clara. This is going straight to my story. Forbes star returns to the fam. You know the drill." My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, simply raised his glass of scotch and grunted in what I assumed was approval. My mother steered me toward the table as if I were a prized guest of honor. The round table was already set for 6 with heavy silver 3-fork place settings and wine glasses that caught the light from the chandelier above. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot was sweating in a silver bucket nearby. My father made a big show of popping the cork, letting the foam spill over his knuckles while Leo whooped as if they'd just won the lottery. "To our brilliant girl," my father boomed, filling every flute to the brim. "Forbes 30 under 30, a $110 million valuation. Who would have thought our quiet little bookworm would turn into a tech titan? They all raised their glasses. I lifted mine, but didn't drink. Chloe leaned across the table, her eyes sparkling with transactional glee. Okay, but seriously, when do we get the family discount on your app? I have like 200,000 followers who are dying for some exclusive beach content. Leo snorted into his drink. Yeah, or maybe she could invest in something that actually turns a profit. Dad's got this insane new plan. My father shot him a warning look, then turned the full force of his charming smile back on me. We'll get to all that. First, we just want to say how incredibly proud we are. Aren't we, Diane? My mother nodded vigorously, dabbing at her perfectly dry eyes with a linen napkin. Beyond proud, I've been telling everyone at the country club, my daughter, the CEO. The waiter reappeared with the first course, jumbo lump crab cakes and tuna tartare arranged on the plates like pieces of modern art. My father ordered another bottle of champagne without asking anyone. The entire performance was flawless. He waited until the plates from the first course had been cleared before he slid a glossy black folder across the table toward me. Embossed in gold foil lettering on the front were the words, "The Vance Coastal Collection, a new era." Inside were slick architectural renderings of sleek white buildings, infinity pools that appeared to spill directly into the ocean, rooftop yoga decks, and photos of smiling models in linen clothing sipping colorful cocktails. "We're finally doing it," my father announced, his voice dropping into the deep, boardroom baritone he reserves for bankers and potential investors. "We're taking the old motels, tearing down the ones that are too far gone, and turning that prime Myrtle Beach oceanfront parcel into a 5-star wellness resort. A full-service spa, a farm-to-table restaurant. We're already in talks with a celebrity chef. This is generational wealth, Clara." My mother clasped her hands together, her face alight with a feverish excitement. "We're even keeping the Vance name on the marquee for the legacy." Leo tapped a page filled with projected revenue numbers. "Construction starts next quarter. The total build-out is going to be around $22 million. The banks are covering most of it, but they want to see some skin in the game from the family first." My father leaned in, placing his elbows on the table, his eyes locked on mine. "We need $2.5 million as a bridge loan, a family investment. We'll pay you 6% interest, paid back in full within 24 months, once the resort is cash flowing. It's a better return than any savings account, and it keeps everything in-house." He said the word in-house as if it were sacred. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand, her diamond bracelet flashing under the light. "It's what families do, sweetheart. We take care of each other." Chloe was still filming, trying to be discreet under the table. Uncle Robert nodded along solemnly, as if this were the most reasonable request in the world. My father then slid a single sheet of paper across the linen, already prepared. It was a wire transfer form with my full name typed neatly at the top. The routing and account number fields were left conspicuously blank. All I had to do was fill it in. I let them finish the entire elaborate sales pitch. I looked through the glossy brochures, nodded at the 3D renderings, and listened patiently to the same tired, empty promises they had been making my entire life. I waited until my father leaned back in his chair, a satisfied, expectant look on his face. I waited until my mother's practiced smile started to look strained at the edges. I waited until Leo had ordered a third bourbon and was bragging about the corner office he'd have in the new resort. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. Then I opened the plain manila folder I had brought with me. My father chuckled, still riding the high of his own performance. "What's that, honey? You brought us a proposal of your own?" I slid the first document across the pristine white linen. It was a notice of default from Atlantic Union Bank, stamped with a date from 3 months ago. This says the business has missed the last 4 payments on its primary mortgage. The total amount in arrears is $872,000. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. "Oh, that's just a simple timing issue." I turned the page. The second document was the final demand letter the bank had sent 31 days ago. South Carolina law gives you 42 days from the date of this letter to cure the default or face acceleration of the entire loan. You're 11 days away from losing everything. Leo shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Banks bluff like that all the time. It's a negotiation tactic. I kept going, my voice calm and even. The third sheet was a record of a second mortgage from a private lender in Charleston, filed quietly 18 months ago against the family home on 62nd Avenue. You borrowed another $1.5 million at 14% interest. The balloon payment was due last quarter. You rolled it over into a third lien just last month to keep the lights on, didn't you? Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Those are aggressive lenders. It's just the cost of doing business. I looked directly at my father. The house is cross-collateralized with the business loans. If the primary business note accelerates, the bank can and will foreclose on the residence as well. The sale date gets set automatically. You have no equity left. There's nothing left to borrow against. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. My mother's smile was completely gone, replaced by a pale mask of fear. My father's face flushed a dark, mottled red under his expensive tan. "This is private family business," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You do not air our laundry at the dinner table." I didn't raise my voice. "You made it my business the second you asked me for $2.5 million that I earned while you were busy ignoring my existence." Chloe tried to force a laugh, but it came out as a strangled, nervous squeak. "Wow, you're being a little dramatic." I turned to the last page in my folder. It was a printout from the Horry County Circuit Court public docket. The foreclosure auction is already scheduled. 42 days from the final notice. That's it. There are no extensions without a full payoff of the entire debt. My father slammed his palm down on the table, hard enough to make the silverware rattle. "Where the hell did you get these?" "They're public records," I said simply. "Anyone can walk into the clerk's office and pull them. My attorney, Julian Croft, did it for me last week. He's very thorough." Leo leaned forward, his eyes narrowed into slits. "So what? You just came here to humiliate us?" "No," I answered, my voice like ice. "I came to watch you ask the daughter you wrote off for money you have absolutely no way of ever repaying." My mother started twisting her napkin, her knuckles white, until the fine linen tore. "We are your parents. You don't speak to us like this." My father pointed a thick, trembling finger at me. "After everything we gave you—" "You gave me nothing," I cut in, my voice sharp and clear. "You gave me a $500 a month allowance that you used as a weapon to threaten me. I built everything I have while you were pouring money into Leo's failed business ideas and Chloe's sponsored posts." Uncle Robert tried to play the guilt card. "Blood looks after blood, Clara. That's just how the world works." I slowly closed my folder. Not anymore. The shift in the room was instantaneous. The manufactured warmth evaporated, leaving a chilling cold in its place. My father's jaw worked silently, as if he were chewing on glass. My mother's eyes, which had been theatrically dabbing at non-existent tears earlier, now filled with real, panicked ones. Leo's hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists on the table. Chloe's phone was completely forgotten in her lap. "You ungrateful little—" my father began, his voice choked with rage. I stood up. The legs of my chair scraped loudly in the sudden, deafening silence. I stood up slowly, took out my own phone, and turned the screen toward my father. The message from 2 years ago, from my graduation day, glowed brightly in the dim, opulent room. I read it aloud, my voice steady and devoid of all emotion, mimicking the same cold, dismissive tone he had used on me back then. "You actually went through with it without us there. Fine. Don't expect another dime from me. You made your choice." My father's face drained of all color. My mother froze, her wine glass hovering halfway to her lips. Leo's mouth hung open. Chloe's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto her plate. I locked the screen and looked straight into the eyes of the man who had written those words. "Sorry," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I'm busy. The Forbes party starts at 7. The sentence hung in the air between us like the echo of a slap. My mother found her voice first, a shrill, cracking sound. "This is childish, Clara." My father tried to stand, but his knees seemed to buckle. He sank back heavily into his chair. "You will not speak to me like that." I was already thumbing through my contacts. I tapped the silent mode icon off so the entire room could hear every soft digital chime as I blocked their numbers, one by one. Father, blocked. Mother, blocked. Leo, blocked. Chloe, blocked. Uncle Robert, blocked. Each quiet tone sounded louder than a gunshot in the tense silence. Just then, the double doors behind me opened without a knock. Julian Croft, my attorney, stepped into the room. He was tall, dressed in an impeccable gray suit, and carried a sleek leather briefcase. He didn't smile. He didn't acknowledge anyone in the room except for me. "Everything's ready," he said, his voice all business, as he placed a thin blue folder on the table in front of my father. The top page bore the official seal of the Horry County Circuit Court and the letterhead of Atlantic Union Bank. My father stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. Julian kept his voice cool and professional. "As of 4:30 this afternoon, my client, Ms. Vance, purchased the first position note and all associated liens from the original lender. The bank has accepted the assignment of debt. The acceleration of the loan stands. There will be no cure period extension available." My mother let out a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a scream. "You can't do that." "I already did," I answered. Leo finally exploded, his face contorted with rage. "You bought our debt. What kind of monster are you?" "The kind who learned from the very best," I said, looking at my father. His hands were shaking as he reached for the folder, fumbling with the pages like a man who had suddenly forgotten how to read. Julian continued, his voice relentless. "The foreclosure sale remains scheduled. The personal residence is included in the collateral package. All vehicles titled to the business will be repossessed within the next 10 business days." Chloe started crying for real this time, thick black streaks of mascara running down her cheeks. "This is gonna ruin my brand." Uncle Robert just drained the last of his scotch and stared blankly at the bottom of the empty glass. I picked up my simple cloth tote bag. The chair leg scraped again as I pushed it back in. My father found his voice. It was cracked and small, a voice I had never heard from him before. "Clara, please." I walked to the door. Julian stayed behind just long enough to slide a business card across the table. "My office will handle all future communication." I didn't look back. The heavy doors closed behind me with a soft, final click. 1 year later, I was driving north on Highway 17, the autumn windows down, the salt air in my hair, heading toward a house I actually owned. I took the exit for the old neighborhood out of a strange, vestigial habit, the same route I used to drive back when I still thought family was a place you could go home to. The streets looked smaller, less significant under the pale October light. I slowed the car as I passed the cul-de-sac where the Vance house used to sit, pristine behind its perfectly manicured hedges. Now, strips of red foreclosure tape were crisscrossed over the front door like a grim parody of a Christmas ribbon. A faded, water-stained auction sign was leaning crookedly in the front yard, the grass grown high and wild around it. The ornate marble fountain my father had installed the year Leo graduated from high school was cracked down the middle, empty except for a thick carpet of dead leaves. 2 houses down, a tow truck was idling at the curb. The black Range Rover that used to block the driveway every Sunday was hooked up and being lifted, its back wheels spinning uselessly in the air. The driver gave a casual wave to a neighbor who was watching from her porch while sipping her morning coffee, as if this were the most entertaining thing she'd seen all week. I kept driving. At a stoplight near the warehouse district in Conway, I spotted Leo. He was wearing a fluorescent yellow safety vest and unloading heavy boxes from a semi-truck. His hair was cut short, his face was tanned from working outdoors, and the designer sunglasses he used to live in were gone. He didn't see me, he just looked tired, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that his afternoons on the golf course had never produced. Chloe's face popped up on a digital billboard near the mall a week after that, but not in the way she had ever wanted. The local paper ran the foreclosure story on the front page of the Sunday business section. Her tear-streaked, rambling Instagram live video in which she denied everything only made the screenshots go viral. Her sponsors dropped her overnight. The last post on her feed was just a plain black square with the caption, "Taking a break." My parents moved into a one-bedroom apartment off a busy boulevard, the kind with exterior hallways and a shared laundry room. I know this because the pawn shop on the corner sent me an automated email when my father's gold Rolex showed up in their inventory system. My mother's 3-carat engagement ring followed it 2 weeks later. The listings were public record. I never answered the string of calls from unknown numbers that started coming in after the auction. I didn't need to. The message had been delivered. My new house sits on a quiet, private lake, 2 hours west of the coast, far enough away that the ocean is only a faint memory on the wind. The mailbox at the end of the long driveway reads Croft in simple brushed steel lettering. I legally changed my name the same week the judge signed the final foreclosure order, not because I married Julian, although the paperwork certainly made our lives simpler, but because the name Vance no longer felt like mine. Croft was the name of the first person who had ever chosen to stand by me without any conditions attached. Some mornings, I sit out on the dock with a cup of coffee and just watch the mist burn off the still water. The silence out here is different from the silence I grew up with. It isn't the empty, anxious silence of waiting for someone to notice you. It's the full, peaceful sound of finally being home. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty. I don't. I learned, the hardest way possible, that love isn't a debt you owe someone just because you happen to share their blood. Real family, the kind that matters, earns that title every single day. Mine ignored me until I became useful, then tried to cash me in like a winning lottery ticket. I just refused to be their lucky number. Walking away wasn't cruel. It was the first truly honest thing any of us had ever done. And if you're watching this, wondering if cutting toxic people out of your life somehow makes you the villain, just remember this. Peace isn't free, but it is worth every single penny you will never have to give them again.